So today we're testing out the Rokinon 12mm f2 lens as a vlogging lens, and we're going to talk about a number of the advantages of using this lens as a vlogging lens, as well as the one big disadvantage of this lens as a vlogging lens. And the first significant advantage of using this lens is the price. You can get this lens new on Amazon for $249, and I'll put a link in the description down below to where I got my copy of the lens. And that puts it probably between $150 and $200 cheaper than the other wide angle options that I would recommend for vlogging on the Canon M50 and the Canon M6 Mark II. And those lenses would be the 11-22 EFM mount lens, which I think generally sells at around $400, and the Sigma 16mm f1.4, which is generally around $500 or so. $400 to $500 for those two lenses. Where this one on Amazon new is $249. The other significant advantage of this lens, particularly over the kit lens and the 11-22mm lens, is the f2 aperture. That's going to allow you to shoot and vlog in much lower lighting conditions without raising your ISO up so high that you get a noisy, unusable image. In addition to that, when you compare this lens to the kit lens or the 11-22mm lens, the sharpness on the Rokinon 12mm is far and above those other two lenses, and in my copy of the Rokinon 12mm f2, it's actually sharper than my Sigma 16mm 1.4, which I know is a very, very good lens, and I must admit I've shot them side by side a number of times, both at the f2 aperture, and consistently what I found was the Rokinon is a sharper lens. Train, wait for the train. In addition to that, the Rokinon lens gives a linear field of view, or a linear image, which means that you don't get that fisheye distorting effect, and as long as you generally keep yourself pretty well in the center of frame, you're going to get straight lines and your face isn't going to look funny and distorted. Now, because it is 12mm, you are going to get this weird effect that when I reach forward, my hands can look huge and then my head looks small in the background. But that's not an unusual look for vlogging, and something you do see used on YouTube a lot as sort of an effect or a way to bring people into the image. The 12mm also gives you a great field of view as far as what you see around you. I mean, you can see the sky, you can see the train line, you can see the train in that earlier shot. So it's also a very good focal length for vlogging, where 10 or 11mm is probably a bit too wide, and I think that sweet spot is probably 12, 13mm. So this is sitting right in the sweet spot of a perfect vlogging lens. The other thing I should mention is the size of this lens, and it is very compact. It's much smaller, much lighter than the Sigma 16mm. It's a little bit bigger than the kit lens, probably a similar size to the EFM 11-22mm lens, but it is a size that really fits well with this camera and this camera system. And it's not like adapting a bigger EFM piece of glass. It is made to go on these smaller mirrorless APS-C size cameras, so it really suits the camera well as far as size and functionality goes. And I suppose the last thing we got to talk about, the challenge with vlogging with this lens, is the fact that it is a manual focus lens. But you really shouldn't let that scare you, because there is something that happens with the depth of field in a very wide angle lens, which actually makes this quite usable for vlogging and general photography and videography. And that is, the wider the field of view, the more the depth of field is. So the depth of field means the amount of distance between, when you're looking at an image, between the nearest object that appears in focus to your naked eye looking at it and the furthest away object that is still in focus. Now, if you use a telephoto zoom lens and you're zooming right in on something, you will often see that you have a razor thin depth of field. So the wider you get, the deeper that area that appears in focus to the naked eye is. And so and the other thing I should say is, the more you stop the lens down, so the smaller you make the opening or the aperture, the higher number aperture you turn it to, the more depth you get in that area of focus. So right now I've got it set to, I think, f8, and I've got it focused to about 0.75 meters. And for the most part, that is going to have almost everything around me in focus. I should be pretty well in focus. The objects near to me should be pretty well in focus. And the only things that should be potentially out of focus are maybe the things more in the distance. But I wouldn't be surprised if those are pretty close to being in focus as well. And if you buy this lens as a vlogging lens, there is some other great stuff you can do with it. It has a very close minimum focus distance, which makes it great for incredible and spectacular photography, where you can get a small object very close to the lens and take a picture, and you just really get this incredible feeling image. You cannot get that with the Sigma 16mm, and you can't get that with the 11-22 or the kit lens. So that feature is absolutely unique to using this lens. The next thing, and the reason I bought this lens in the first place, was for astrophotography. So I do time-lapse astrophotography with this lens, and it is widely regarded as one of the best astro lenses you can buy. So when you're looking at what you're going to buy for a vlogging lens, and you add in the fact that this now becomes your astro lens, your wide angle for close focus photography, you're really adding a lot of versatility to this lens, in addition to saving $150 to $250. So you're not just getting a vlogging lens, you're getting a lot more than that, and you're saving a fairly significant chunk of change. So, would I use the Rokinon 12mm f2 for vlogging? Absolutely, particularly if you're doing a lot of low light situations. The f2 is really going to help get a lot of light in and get you a better quality image, particularly if you're interested in playing with astrophotography and astro time lapses, which are things I love, and this lens is absolutely magnificent at. And particularly if you're interested in wide angle photography, having objects close to the lens with a close focus. Also, because of the linear view that this thing gives, or the linear image it produces, it's magnificent for landscape photography, it's magnificent for interior photography, architectural photography. So it is an extremely versatile lens, and really I think it's just about getting beyond the fact that it is a manual focus lens, which really doesn't need to be a problem as long as you understand this depth of field concept and you use the lens in the right way. So I hope this was helpful to anybody trying to pick a new vlogging lens or wondering if the Rokinon 12mm f2 is usable for vlogging. So there's my opinion on it. Thanks for watching. Stay creative.